I'm Patty Garcia. I'm a graduate student at the University of Illinois, and I'm here with Sylvia Mendez.
I'm Sylvia Mendez, a civil rights activist that just received the Medal of Freedom from President Obama in February this year.
I'd like to take this time to thank Lambda Upsilon Lambda Alpha Chi chapter, as well as El Caso and SORF for allowing us the opportunity to have her on campus. We'll go through a series of questions on the status of Latinos in the U.S. Okay, to our first question. There are some who believe that the status of Latinos and African American students was actually better before desegregation. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm so against that thought because how could they be better? Even though they said it was separate but equal, the schools were never equal. So how could being separate be better?
They've also said that white students have been the ones to benefit more from diversity in the classroom. What is your response?
Absolutely not, because this is the way the students, especially students that have just arrived to the United States, this is how they assimilate into our culture, and how they're able to learn about other nationalities. Everybody benefits from being in an integrated class, not only the whites, but everybody.
Do you think we've reached the promise of desegregation?
We are not there yet. Right now, what Brown and Mendez did was they got rid of, by law, segregation. But what we have now is de facto segregation.
That's true. There's new forms of resegregation across the United States schools. What can we take from the case and the experience with Mendez versus Westminister to challenge new forms of segregation?
I think what students need to know about Mendez versus Westminster is so important that they know that Latinos have always wanted the best for their students, for their children. They have been fighting for equal education since 1930. There was a Lemon Grove incident in California where the parents stood up because they were having the kids go into a separate school, into a Mexican school, and they stood up and won. And in Mendez, they also we're fighting for equal rights. That's what my father said. I am fighting this for my children because I want them to know that they are equal to everybody. And I don't want them to grow up with inferiority complex.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think desegregation is so important?
Why is desegregation?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so important because the students will learn from others, from other nationalities when you're all together, like I stated in the other question that you said. But aside from that, I think that integration is so important because the schools in the segregated areas in some of our large cities where we have the de facto segregation are not funded the same way as the schools in the American Anglo schools.
Mm. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Chicago, 2 hours north of here. This is a city that has been said that is the most segregated in the U.S. Now, there's this belief that when you have little neighborhoods or ethnic enclaves, that the communities are actually better that way, that the community benefits from having these ethnic enclaves. What do you think about that when they're segregated like that?
Well, I do not agree with it, but I do know that that Latinos like to stay together with their own nationalities. I know that in Orange County we have barrios that are all Mexican, and some of the families have lived there. And in Westminster, where this case was fought, when my parents came here in the 1920s, our family was already established there, and to this day, the Latinos, my family, are still living in that area where they could move out of that area. And sometimes it's because they enjoy the company of other people just like them, and that's why they stay in the same areas. But it's so important for them to know that the students, if they stay in those poverty areas and they go to those schools that are funded so poorly, they will not get the education that they would if they were in another area, in one of the better schools. But also it's important to know that even though we're segregated right now, that by law they could segregate us at one time, and now they can't. So if a parent wants to move to another area and take her child to a better school, they can. At one time we could not do that.
Interesting. There are some school districts and cities that have, in order to integrate their schools, they allow parents to have the choice. So they don't have zoning rules as to if you live in this block, you have to go to that school. So it's more of an open choice. Do you think that that is an alternative to continuing integration?
I think it is. I think it's wonderful if they have a choice.
But going back to the earlier question with ethnic enclaves, if we have communities where they feel more comfortable
Yes.
living among themselves,
Yes.
then once they have the choice to take their students to another school, is that really going to happen? Are we going to just have schools again where they're going to feel comfortable and just segregate?
It seems like this is happening right now, and that is why it's so important that we go out there and tell them the story about Mendez, how it was fought for integration, because it was so important for them to know that it's so important to assimilate into different cultures, and I think that they need to know that the schools are better funded in the other areas, and if they want their children to succeed, they have to put them in a place where they'll be able to succeed, and not into a rundown school that's not teaching them how to get into colleges. Right now we have schools in these areas that you're talking about where they don't even have AP classes, and the students don't even know that they have to take certain classes to go to college. So they think that just by graduating that one day they can just go to college. No, you have to prepare and have classes that'll let you enter a college, especially if you want to go to a big university. There's certain steps that you have to take.
Now, there are some schools that are set up to help either immigrant communities transition into the American culture, or that are founded on cultural empowerment, so they target specific groups. Do you think that these types of schools perpetuate segregation?
I'm not aware of that, because we do have charter schools where they're trying to better the students in California. I'm not aware of the schools here in Chicago or where we're at right now in Illinois. But in California, we have a partnership schools where we involve the parents. And the school that's named after my mother and father, a fundamental school in Santa Ana, we have the parents be responsible for the student, and if the parents are not responsible for the student can just get away with not doing their homework and not getting educated. So it's so important that the parents get involved, and this is the kind of teaching that we have at the Mendez School. And in Los Angeles with a partnership, which is the other Mendez, there's 2 schools in California named after my parents. One in Los Angeles and one in Santa Ana. And the one in Los Angeles is one of the partnership schools that Villaraigosa has decided to help and they are being helped a lot.
Okay. Given the increase of Latinos across the U.S., what are some of the things that we can do, or the education system can do as well, to address the needs of our students?
There are so many needs that they have. One of the things that I go around and I think it's so important to involve the parents. And I know that sometimes the parents cannot help the student with money, and they can't help them with homework because some of our parents don't even speak English. So, but what I want the teachers, and I want and what I go around and people that are trying to help the Latino community is to empower the parents, to empower the students by apoyando, which means to encourage the students to let them know that they have to have an education so they can have a comfortable life here in the United States, and that it's all there, it's all free, and it's all there for them to have. And I think it's so important that the parents get involved with the student. And even though they can't help, like I said before, with money or with homework or with, they can still empower them by by showing them how important education is and keeping inspiring them and not letting them drop out of school, out of high school. They have to go on to college and then on to get a bachelor's degree so they can be comfortable in a good job someday.
So besides parent involvement and integration, what are some other things that we can incorporate into our education system to ensure the success of Latino students?
I think that it's so important that the teachers get classes on the different minorities so they can know about the different cultures, the different languages, the different how the different cultures, how they react, how they can help them, in their educational field. Because some of the teachers have never been around Latinos or African Americans, and they are not able to communicate with them. So I think it's so important that that the teachers, professors have classes on cultural diversity. It's so important so they can help the student.
How can we as students and as community members also contribute to that change?
I think by being involved. I think it's so important that everybody gets involved in it because it's something that we need for this country to become cohesive and to unite. Because right now we're number 19 in education in the world. We used to be number 1 in education in the world, and now we're number 19. So I think we all have to get together. We all have to work so hard to up that, so we can become the number 1 in education.
What kind of advice can you give to Latino students and parents in regard to our education system?
I think to the students, it's so important that they stay in school. People have fought for you. If you're listening, students, people have fought, and they continue to fight. We continue to fight for you to have equal, just quality education, and we're not going to give up, and we're going to continue. And it's up to you to prove that you can do it. So it's so important that you go on to college, get up that percentage where we only have 1% of PhD in Latinos, and up that, and 14% with a BS. We have to up those. And the whole thing is for you to live the American dream. You have to succeed, and you have to stay focused and get that education. And for the parents, the Latino parents, they have to help their family, their students, if they can with money, if they can with younger students with homework, but if they can't, they have to encourage them to stay in school because that's what they need, encouragement. And that's what my parents gave me, because after they won the case, they went into bed times with money, but the encouragement that they gave me, I knew that I had to succeed. I went on and worked in a cannery. When I was going into nursing school, I used to work all night long and then go to nursing school in the morning. It was all because of the encouragement that my parents had given me. So I know how important it is for the parents to encourage the students.
Let's say if you had Secretary of Education Arne Duncan and President Obama in the room, and they gave you the authority and the power and the resources to do whatever you wanted with our education system, what would be some things that you would implement? Or what would you tell them that based on your experience?
I think that with President Obama giving me the Medal of Freedom, it showed that he was encouraging us Latinos to succeed, because he knew that I was going around the country speaking to Latinos about the importance of education. So I know that he has already done such a wonderful thing by acknowledging the importance of education, and I know that he's working also with the Latino educators, and Duncan is too, and they were involved in a big conference for Latinos, I know, in California not very long ago.
Okay. Now, how did you get involved in public speaking and lectures, and why?
That's a very long story, and I'll try to make it very short. What happened was that I was a nurse for 33 years, didn't want to resign because I had just become a assistant nursing director, and I loved my job, but my mother was very sick, and she used to say, Sylvia, nobody knows about this history of California, how 7 years before Brown versus the Board of Education, how California was desegregated. And when I try to tell people, they don't even believe me, Sylvia. And I think it's so important that everybody knows about this case, about how Latinos have always fought for education for quality education for their children, and how California was the first state to be desegregated. It's history. And I promised my mother that I would start going around and talking about it. And that was 12 years ago, and I have been going around, and so many people still don't know about Mendez versus Westminster. But I think it's important that everybody knows that so many people are working for quality education, and not only Latinos, but everybody united are working to get quality, equal education for everybody, not just for one race or one group or one nationality, but for everybody.
What has been your most rewarding experience while going around the U.S. talking about?
The most rewarding experience for me has been students that I have spoken to in college that in high schools that go on to college, and then I'm invited to that college to speak. I was just in UC Davis from a student that met me in a college. I went to different colleges, USC, UC Irvine. Usually it's students that bring me to the college because they have heard me speak at their high school, and then they go on to college. I have inspired them to go on to college, and they want others to hear my story, and they bring me onto college, just like I'm here today at the University of Illinois. A student that had heard me speak invited me here today.
Well, thank you very much. On behalf of the university, that we are very proud and happy that you're here. I think that it'll be a great event for our students to really go out and educate themselves about what is not being included in a lot of the curriculum across the United States, about Mendez versus Westminster and this case that set the precedent for Brown versus Board. So
Thank you so much for having me.